I think, and that's part of it, is I think that people don't know how to react. They don't know what to say. It's difficult. I think the support was there, but it was kind of, what do you do? Because you don't want to not get work, or but you also don't want to overwhelm the person with too much work either, right? So how do you find that balance? You don't want to be like, well, I can't give her that project because she has this new diagnosis, or I can't not give her that project because she has that diagnosis. So it was a little dance, right? Because it was new for me, but it was also new for my employer. And just also the way that the news came out wasn't the way that I wanted it to be shared. I was very cautious about it, but once it kind of spread, I thought, I'm leaning into this.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the All Inclusive podcast. It's MS Awareness Week, and in today's episode, I'm joined by Sandy Diaz Haley, founder and principal of SDH Communications. In this episode, Sandy shares her journey with multiple sclerosis and how it has impacted her career. She also provides valuable tips on how employers and individuals can create a supportive and inclusive work environment for people with MS and other chronic illnesses or disabilities. As always, before jumping into the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on your notification bell, and follow on your favourite podcast platform so that you never miss an episode. That being said, let's jump in. Hi, Sandy.
Hello, Natasha. Thank you so much for chatting today.
I know, I'm so excited for this conversation today. And today of all days, it's MS Awareness Week, and I really am excited to have this conversation with you in particular, because I know about your background and your history and the work that you're currently doing now as well. It's so important, and I really want our listeners to hear a little bit more about your own personal journey and what you're up to today and in the future. So why not kick things off by telling us a little bit about yourself and where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. So let's see. I'm originally from Lima, Peru. My family moved here to the US when I was 6 years old. And my professional background is I have 20 years of communications experience, and the last 5 years really focusing specifically on diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as employer brand. So that's just a little bit about my background. My previous role was I was the VP of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion for a large mortgage servicer in the US. And then this year, I've just launched my own consultancy, communications consultancy, SDH Communications. As you can see, it's still fresh and new. If I'm having a hard time pronouncing it myself, so very excited to kick that off. So yeah.
Oh, great. So could you tell us a little bit about your journey with multiple sclerosis and how that's impacted your career?
Absolutely. So, okay, I'll put it this way. In 2014, there was a time in my career, and I'm kind of dating myself when I share this with you. I was working, I had BlackBerry as a client, and was traveling through all of Latin America. I had a team across Latin America and was always on a plane, the company was based in, BlackBerry was based in Waterloo, right outside of Toronto. So if I wasn't going to Latin America, I was in Canada, and I was just always fatigued. And every time I would get on the plane, I would wear compression socks because I felt like my feet were always buzzing. Weird, I know. But you just kind of chalk it up to, well, I'm traveling. I'm so important. I'm just like traveling so much, and I'm always on a plane. You make up excuses for things, right? And so I was traveling a ton. And then I got engaged, and my husband and I were working out, getting ready, getting all buff for our wedding in Mexico. And my left hand, the two fingers kind of started to kind of curl up and permanently like a claw. So I went to the doctor, and they said, "Oh, it's a pinched nerve in your forearm." And I thought, okay, well, this makes sense because I'm working out my arms, and I've never worked out my arms. Again, making up excuses as one does.
Yeah.
had the surgery, physical therapy, and I said, the weird things in my legs and my feet are kind of starting to go up to my ribs, and I'm starting to kind of feel numb everywhere, is what I told the physical therapist. And he said, "Oh, it's your sciatica." Oh, yes, of course, my sciatica. So go on to our wedding. We get married in Mexico. And just on my wedding day, I was having a hard time walking. So I remember we were walking down the aisle, which was, I'm barefoot on the beach, like, one does in the movies with the sunset behind you.
Oh,
And I'm
amazing.
walking down the aisle, and I have my mom on one hand and my dad on the other. And it's almost like they're helping me walk. And then the whole time when we're standing there at the altar, I'm just kind of shaking. And in the wedding video, you can see that I'm kind of shaking. And then, I'm a dancer. I love to dance. I'm trying to dance, but I'm just marking the moves. I can't do them full out. I'm in Mexico. I'm ready to da 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 the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I can't. Someone says, "Hey, your shoe's over there. Why is your?" I didn't even realize that I had one shoe off because my feet were so numb. I just was caught up in everything that was going on and didn't want to miss a thing. So it was just something wasn't right. And then followed by our honeymoon, which I slept through. I slept through the whole thing. We were in this little bungalow, like little tree house in Tulum. And I had to ask to change rooms because I couldn't make it up the stairs. I can't be climbing up to this tree house. I know it's romantic, but I'm sorry, I can't do it. So we got back and I had an MRI, and that's when we discovered the multiple sclerosis diagnosis. And it turns out that MS is really triggered quite a bit by stress and heat, hence the symptoms at our wedding on the beach in Mexico.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Long story short, the diagnosis came at the end of 2014. So I've always been a very healthy person, always been a very active person, running, cycling, whatever that may be. And it was definitely quite a blow. In my mind, I didn't know anything about MS. I didn't know what it was. To be completely honest, I thought it was going to be something else. I was picturing myself like in a wheelchair and a walker, and that I was going to, I don't know, that I was going to end up like with the shakes or something. I just had no idea. So the first thing I did was just get really smart, really start to research, but not too much, because they say
it can get a bit scary. Yeah. When you Google, like sometimes when you Google your symptoms, you're just like, oh my goodness. Yeah, no, I understand.
Yes. And so just kind of researching, I went through the National MS Society, because that seemed to be a place that was, backed by research and science and doctors. Spent a lot of time looking at the resources there, and really tried to adjust to my new normal. Right. And it took a minute. And then a few months later, I found out I was pregnant. So I do want to say this, which is really cool about MS. They call pregnancy an MS vacation.
Oh, really?
Because MS essentially is your body attacking itself. And so your body knows to protect the fetus. And so those 9 months where I remember when I found out I was pregnant, I went and hid in the bathroom and I called a friend, and I was this is too much life. This is too much life happening at the same time. I just got married. I just got this diagnosis. I just bought a house, and now you're putting this baby thing on me. And I remember her saying, "You're married, you're 35, you're sneaking around in the house that you own with your husband. Calm down, go tell him what's going on." But it was just a lot of life happening at the same time. But it was such a blessing to know that that this could happen, and it could happen so quickly, but also that I would feel so good for 9 months after feeling so bad for so long. So it was really a beautiful blessing.
What do you think? What do you think was a key factor in you kind of dealing with everything? Because like you said, like life was just happening. Life was lifing. and things were coming left, right, and center. And I know like you spoke with your friend and she was kind of a help for you. But for you overall, what do you think allowed you to really push through and see the positive in everything that was happening?
I think my partner. I think my husband has just always been a rock from day one. And I was single for a very long time. And so it was, making yourself, allowing myself to be vulnerable, but then also knowing, oh, I have this like life partner by my side who is there through thick and thin and is going to support me no matter what and be my rock was, God, that was it was just incredible. In fact, so this was the end of 2014. In March of 2015, he created a team for us. So the National MS Society has a fundraiser every year. It's Walk MS. And he created a team, super cheesy. He named it after our wedding hashtag, Haley Ever After. So cheesy, I know.
Aww.
But it was, that was, I mean, our friends and family showed up. So we raised, I think we were the top fundraising team. We raised over $10,000 and we walked. And I ended up doing a segment on the U.S. Hispanic news station to create awareness for that audience. And it was so special because our friends and family rallied around us, and I just felt like, you know what, it's going to be okay. And I'll tell you something else. So, like I said, my background is in communications, right? So when I did get this diagnosis, I said, I'm going to be the best damn thing that ever happened to MS. And I mean that. And that's why I thank you so much for having me on today, because I didn't know what MS was. And so it's really important to create that awareness, put it out there. And I'm so grateful that celebrities, like Selma Blair and some others have come out with their diagnosis and created so much awareness, because we need that. That is the way we're going to advance. And that's the way we're going to find a cure for this damn thing. It is just that.
No, definitely. And I'm so glad that you're here today to share your story and your journey. I'm curious that, so in you reaching your diagnosis, you were doing a lot of traveling. You said your work involved a lot of traveling. So when you got your diagnosis, I'm guessing that kind of changed. How was that transition? How was it when you communicated that to your organization?
Um, Not great. Not great. I think, and that's part of it, is I think that people don't know how to react. They don't know what to say. It's difficult. I think the support was there, but it was kind of, what do you do? Because you don't want to not get work, but you also don't want to overwhelm the person with too much work either, right? So how do you find that balance? You don't want to be like, well, I can't give her that project because she has this new diagnosis, or I can't not give her that project because she has that diagnosis. So it was a little dance, right? Because it was new for me, but it was also new for my employer. And just also the way that the news came out wasn't the way that I wanted it to be shared. I was very cautious about it, but once it kind of spread, I thought, I'm leaning into this because there's nothing I can do about it now. And that's when I said, I'm going to be the best damn thing that ever happened. And that's why the awareness is so important, right? To not just tell people what it is, but also that I can look like this and look good and everything else, but also let you know that a couple of days ago, I couldn't get out of bed, or I sure as hell parked in a handicap spot when I went to Starbucks this morning because I didn't feel like walking as far as I could have in the other spot. It's just things that it's under the surface, it's underneath the surface. So it takes time for people to wrap their heads around how you treat this and how you treat different scenarios and situations.
So have you encountered any misconceptions or stereotypes about people with MS or a disability in your professional life? And how have you dealt with it?
Yeah, I think I have. So I'll say this, like I mentioned, I don't look like a person who has a disability at all. There's actually a lot of things about me that people wouldn't know if they look at me. I'm an immigrant, and you wouldn't know that. English is my second language. You wouldn't know that. I park in a handicap spot. You wouldn't know that. So Yeah, no, I have on different levels. I think that, just like when my husband and I first started dating and he told people, oh yeah, I'm dating a woman, she's Peruvian. And then they meet me and I walk into the room, I'm like, hi y'all. It's like, what? The same thing with, oh, my friend has multiple sclerosis. And I come in and like just after going to spin class, right? I'm like, hey y'all.
Yeah.
And I look a certain way. I think people expect something else. That is a blessing and a curse. I think the problem with that, at least when it comes to MS, is people expect you to be one way. But again, because MS is essentially it's your body attacking itself, like I mentioned, right, and your nervous system, and so the symptoms can range from. MS is such a weird disease. It's very unpredictable. Your MS looks different than my MS, than anybody else's MS. And you just never really know. It could impact your sight. It can impact, like I was mentioning, the tingliness in your feet and your legs. It also gives me chronic fatigue. It can give people other types of symptoms that I, knock on wood, haven't had yet. But yeah. And so if my feet are tingling, or if I have chronic fatigue, you can say, well, I'm tired too, Sandy. Yeah, my feet hurt. So that's the hard part, when I can say I'm tired and when I can say I can't really stand for too long and things like that. It's no, because I know it looks like I'm okay, but I'm not. So that is, I think, the biggest misconception is if they think I'm someone with MS, I'm going to walk in with a walker or a cane, or I look healthy. So why can't I go do that? Why can't I, do X, Y, and Z? So it's a tricky game. It really, really is. Managing expectations with this disease, because it is invisible, is very difficult.
What do you think that employers and your colleagues can play in creating a supportive environment for you and an inclusive work environment where you feel like you can be yourself, and if you have those bad days where you can't get out of bed, you don't feel any type of way of kind of just explaining that and saying, actually today I can't come in today, or I really need a break?
Yeah, no, I think that's such a great question. I think that empathy and compassion go such a long way. So just being really understanding. It was funny. I was listening to, I don't remember who was telling the story of, like, a woman, one of her colleagues, her husband was very sick at home. And one of their colleagues every day would walk up to her desk and say, how's your husband? How is he doing today? And this woman, although she was grateful for this colleague, she turned to her other colleague and said, every single day, I'm now to the point where I dread her walking up to me because I don't want to talk about it, and here this woman is with the best of intentions, just trying to check in with her colleague on her husband's health because she's his caretaker, and sometimes caretakers are forgotten about. But it just kind of made me think a little bit, because I thought about my situation, and I say empathy and I say compassion, but you also don't want to be treated differently, right? And so it's this weird balance. But I do think it's about just having an open conversation. You don't have to ask me every day, how am I doing? But, if I say, I'm really tired today, maybe not, oh my gosh, me too, or
We're going to take a minute to thank our friends at Dandi, the DEI analytics company, for supporting the show. To drive real change today, DEI leaders need to be strategic and they need to be data-driven. That's why today's most successful DEI leaders use Dandi to measure and manage their DEI programs in real time, track key DEI metrics, and create reports at a push of a button. Are you ready to join the DEI measurement movement? Click the link in the description below to download your free essential guide to data-driven DEI transformation. It comes off dismissive, doesn't it? It's not like it.
Let me one up you, because I stayed up late with the baby and did it. It's like, but this is my husband does it to me, I'm like,
Yeah.
well, but it's different, and I'm not trying to complain. I don't want to seem like a victim, not once, not ever, but there's this element of just thinking before you speak. I'll tell you, working, what the pandemic did for so many of us, as you know, from a DEI perspective, is just really diversified your employees, right? And your candidate pools and all of those things. So I know the last 3 years that I've worked from home have been such a blessing. I've never been this productive in my life, which is a good thing and a bad thing because work-life balance. But it really does provide an opportunity for those of us that do need sometimes a little bit more flexibility. It has completely changed the way that we live and work in a positive way, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I feel like it's one of the positives that have coming out of the pandemic is that people have and organizations have really opened out the mindset of actual flexible working and hybrid working, and it's clearer for them and it's easier for the case to be made that actually having more flexibility in your organization will be your employees would then be able to be more productive. um and it's different for different organizations, don't get me wrong. Not all, flexible working doesn't work for everyone in the same way that it works. It works in different ways depending on the services that you provide and how your organization is set up. But I do definitely agree with you that just having that diverse workforce and that flexibility there as an option is definitely key to really a successful business, I think. I'm curious for all the listeners out there, and for anyone that is listening that may well have a disability or a chronic illness, or actually even suffering with multiple sclerosis as well. What advice would you give to them when it comes to kind of their career goals and advancing those?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I'm going to say this, and I need to practice this every single day. And I have to I almost it's like a mantra. I remind myself this all the time. Give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. I repeat that to myself every morning because it's hard sometimes. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. One, as women, as working moms, because we do have so much more on our plate, right? But then as someone with a disability, I want to work even harder than anybody else. I don't know about you, and I'm not a very competitive person, but something sparks in me if someone tells me that I can't,
Yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
I'll turn around and I'll say, watch me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's the case with those of us that do suffer from a chronic illness or have any sort of disability or anything that's holding us back, that we have to prove people wrong. And although that's great, there is, we can overextend ourselves. Right. And yeah, that happens in a lot of cases. And so we have to remember to give ourselves grace, because for our health, I mean, like I told you, like I said, MS is triggered by stress and heat. Texas is hot as hell. I'm barely not alive in the summer. Okay.
Yeah.
Like well, for several reasons I want to move out of the state, but one of them being just, it's so hot here. And so I find that to be extremely difficult. And I find myself apologizing profusely all the time. But it is a matter of people will give you grace if you can give yourself grace to an extent. It's so much harder said than done.
No, I totally agree with you. And it's definitely, it's great advice, and I think it's advice that can be adopted to everyone, I think, as well, in a similar way. But especially for those that are facing some barriers in their life and in advancing their own careers, you do tend to just want to do more and like push even harder. But yeah, giving yourself grace, definitely. I couldn't agree more than that. That is definitely something that you want to do. So looking back on your career journey, what would you tell your younger self?
Well, looking back on my career journey, I don't know that I would have majored in journalism. I'll say that. Sometimes I regret that I did that just because where the journalism field has gone. Um, but looking back at what I've told myself, there's going to be setbacks. There's going to be setbacks. In 2017, I was working for a global PR agency, and I was managing a global client that essentially, we lost the business. And I was part of a global layoff, very unexpected. I was newly diagnosed with MS. I had, I think, a 1.5-year-old at the time. And that was really scary. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Um, I planned a happy hour. I called it Badass PR Lady Happy Hour because I was not thinking. I was just trying to create a space where I could be vulnerable and I can connect with other professionals. And we had a great turnout. It was like 40 or 50 women that showed up. And I think everyone was just like, this is really cool. This is just women being vulnerable and connecting with one another. No animosity, no competition, just camaraderie. And so I created a Facebook page, and it's actually how I found the job that I had for 5 years, which was great. And that community grew in the last 5 years into 2,000 plus men and women, so women and allies, who support each other and empower each other. And that's been amazing to watch. That would have never happened if I wouldn't have gone through that setback, right? MS, that changed changed my life, but I really do believe it changed it for the better, because now I know that that I have to take care of myself, because you seem like you're this way too. We're high functioning, right?
Yeah.
Right? Yes, yes. And so when you're high functioning, you have very high expectations. And this really, I had to peel back the layers and realize I'm vulnerable. I'm not as strong as I think I am, and I can't do it all, at least all the time. You can't be all things to all people all the time. And so that, I'm going to say, could be a blessing for me. And then, the end of last year, my last role, I was the VP of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for a mortgage servicer. And we had experiencing the market and mortgage rates, and we had layoffs, and I was laid off. And I think that was probably one of the best things that happened as well. There wasn't really anywhere else for me to go in that organization. So these setbacks, and I don't think I would have ever gone out on my own and started my own consultancy if it wasn't for that, right? But it's something that now I'm very newly into it, but this is where I belong, right? And it's funny how those life setbacks can be the greatest lessons. And I always say life is what you make of it, right? You can let it happen to you, but it's how you respond to it. So I'm going to create my own damn story. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to sit and be a victim. I am going to make the most of it. So I think that is what I would tell my younger self is there's going to be setbacks. And guess what? You're going to be fine. In fact, you're going to be better. You're going to be great. But don't sit down and let life happen to you. Write your own story. That's what I would tell myself.
Oh, fantastic. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Sandy, for this fantastic conversation. Like, I really enjoyed it. You're literally amazing. You're an inspiration, definitely. I'm so glad that we've been able to have this conversation. You've been able to share your journey, and all the advice and tips that you shared with us as well has been so valuable. And just before you leave us, what is the best way for anyone who's listening for them to connect with you?
Yeah, no, thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. I am honored to do this. The best way to reach me is to find me via my website, which is SDH, Sandy Diaz Haley, sdhcommunications.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, also Sandy Diaz Haley. Or you can find us on Badass Ladies of DFW. The S's are dollar signs on Facebook. So we're kind of all over the place right now. But
Oh,
yeah,
no, yeah.
thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. And I'm definitely joining the Badass Ladies Facebook group.
So one thing that I have learned about Badass Ladies, which I think is important to mention, is, it started as like, hey, I'm just going to have this happy hour, but it evolved into this organic thing that I never meant for it to. So 5 years later, we are rebranding because we need to be more inclusive. And not just that, but our website can be a bit of an issue for sometimes professionally. I'm sure you can imagine. So we are rebranding. We will be TBC, the Badass Collective, and we are empowering women and allies to define success on their own terms.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Thank you, Sandy. I'm definitely going to be linking down all of the social links that you've explained today. So for anyone who's listening, they can definitely reach you. And thanks again, Sandy. And I look forward to speaking with you again in the future.
As I do as well. Thank you so much, Natasha.